With something like 5 million podcasts, finding a really good one can take a ton of time. So let me recommend one. It's called Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and in each episode, we discuss topics that can be really helpful, like how to read people better, the psychology of crowds, or fun things like the story of Legos, or why you probably wouldn't be here if it weren't for horses. Something You Should Know is the name of it, wherever you get your podcasts.
You come to the New Yorker Radio Hour for conversations that go deeper with people you really want to hear from, whether it's Bruce Springsteen or Questlove or Olivia Rodrigo, Liz Cheney, or the godfather of artificial intelligence, Geoffrey Hinton, or some of my extraordinarily well-informed colleagues at the New Yorker. So join us every week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Let's hang out. Let's hang out. And let's talk about what Lez is about. Let's hang out. And let's listen to two lesbians shout. Let's hang out. Let's hang out.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Lez Hang Out, the podcast where pretty please don't you ever feel like you're less than fucking perfect.
We're just
and then we
really
just devolve
vibing
into
here.
Pink for
I
the
know.
whole night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
From the West Coast, I'm Leigh Holmes Foster.
And from the East Coast, I'm Ellie Brigida. To those of you who've been with us through this whole journey, thank you as always for listening. If you're a new listener, welcome. We're excited to have you here. Here's what's happening this week.
This week in the Lesdom.
This Week in the Lesdom is a place where we can touch base each episode about things going on with the podcast or otherwise. In Season 8, we're continuing to release our bonus Patreon episodes. We'd love for you to join there. If you want to get more Lez Hang Out content, you can get that at bit.ly/LezPatreon. Our last episode was on Saltburn, and we have 23 episodes up total. So you got lots of content there for you to check out.
Also, we have been working behind the scenes, planning our next trip. So you need to stay tuned for details because we have a plan. We want to take queer people to France. We want to have a little French wine region queer retreat experience. So stay tuned for details. They're going to be coming soon. And we're going to be trying to get this trip ready to go, get off the ground. So stay tuned, everyone. It's coming. In the Greater Lez universe, first of all, there's been a hot announcement that there's going to be a sequel to Drive Away Dolls. So I feel like Drive Away Dolls didn't get a ton of coverage, which honestly, I feel like is a little disappointing because I really enjoyed it.
It got some. I feel like it was mixed reviews from the gay community, and we're gonna do it for our next Lez Essential. So we can discuss more. We'll discuss more.
You'll get all of our thoughts.
Yes.
But it is apparently planned to be a trilogy of films, and if they're all as gay as the first one, like, sign me the fuck up. And what I know is that so far, I think I just saw an announcement where Margaret Qualley, who was in Drive Away Dolls, and Aubrey Plaza are supposed to be in the sequel. So,
my God.
she's just racking it up these days. Listen, are we gonna enter our Aubrey Plaza era?
Yes, and also Aubrey, come on the freaking podcast, please.
God, so true.
Would die.
Honestly. Also,
Also, in the Greater Lez universe, Blush and Blue, which is the last lesbian bar in Denver, actually just closed, which is very
Tear.
sad, I know. But I feel like, we're almost experiencing like a circle of life with the lesbian bars. As much as I'm like sad, please stop closing, everyone. New ones are opening, so like we're still doing our best, and I'm trying to look at the silver lining of of our lives, but still sad to hear that Blush and Blue is closing.
You know what would cheer you up, Ellie?
Going
There's
out
this
to the gay bar right now.
No, this next item that I want to tell you about, which is that you should look up this insane clip of Taylor Tomlinson went on the Drew Barrymore show, and there's this clip that I saw where Drew's saying something about how she's like, I just think like it's so attractive when people are really funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Taylor obviously is like, stop flirting with me, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear to God, this is almost word for word. I've watched this clip enough times now, so this is almost word for word what she says. She's like, stop flirting with me, Drew. And Drew's like, yeah, I hear that you find the ladies very attractive. And Taylor is like, I really do. So, like, I'm here for the rest of the week if you want to experiment. And Drew goes, I'm single. And I just feel like this clip is the gay agenda.
Wait, also, Drew Barrymore is not bisexual. I feel like she's come out as bisexual, no?
Not according to this clip. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, Drew Barrymore is a noted bisexual.
Why are they, like, hooking up then?
Then
Like,
they are
just
for sure
kiss,
hooking up.
just
The
kiss.
fact that you said experiment. Yeah, she came out in 2003. She said, do I like
Make
women
it happen.
sexually? Yeah, I do. Totally. I have always considered myself bisexual. So, like, do not erase Drew Barrymore's bisexuality in this clip.
I would never.
That's my.
I just
but
think
also
they need
that
to
makes.
get together.
I mean, they should get together because yes, Drew is bisexual and probably was flirting with her.
Okay, you know the energy that we got in that Anne Hathaway, Emily Blunt, like actors, whatever interview? This was like that, where you're just like, do you need a room? Like, do you need a minute?
Honestly, I hope they get one.
I hope so too.
Really do. That's what's happening this week. Back to you, Ellie and Leigh.
Thanks, Ellie and Leigh. We are so excited to bring you episode 6 of season 8, Myself is Serving. And we are joined by a very special guest today. We have Elle Deran, who is a trans and non-binary actor, advocate, and content creator who can be seen sharing their gender experience on TikTok and Instagram. Elle, thanks for being here.
Woohoo! There's the crowds. Just sounds like just breathing.
Hello. The Zoom
There you
crowd
go.
goes wild.
We'll have Ellie drop in like a crowd cheering. You know?
Perfect. Hello.
Put it in post.
Yes. We are so happy to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Will you actually, I guess before we dive in, because we are going to talk a little bit about self-actualization today, which is super exciting. But I also love to hear from you how you got started on your whole like TikTok kind of content creator thing, because that's like, you know, your big thing.
Yeah. So I came out as trans and non-binary a week before the pandemic hit. And so I really was able to sort of enter a literal cocoon that was my room in my apartment. Like I didn't even leave the room. And so it was crazy. I would leave it to get like Wendy's delivered. Not sponsored, but sponsor me. But I up till then, my sense of self was really pieced together by people's reaction to me. So being alone in my room really made me think like, who am I when no one's in the room? And I spent months kind of isolated, exploring myself, like unfiltered. And then once things started like slowly opening back up, I started to enter the world as this new version of myself. And I started to realize that the world was responding to me differently. And I needed some sort of catharsis about that. So social media became like my vehicle to recreate some of these experiences that I was having and say what I wish I said in the moment. And like I realized that I was finding catharsis there, and then other folks were finding catharsis through my catharsis. We were just catharting all over the place. So
We love the group catharting.
Yeah, it's so good.
You mean particularly like the videos where you're like, shit, people say to me.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, that was like my first viral video was an experience I had in a drive-through. And because that's really the only only interaction I was having at the time with people was like in a drive-through. And it was just so fascinating because I was like, I knew that I had changed and I knew about transphobia, and I also had never experienced it. I was like that little twink who was just skipping through the streets, smiling at every stranger. And rarely did I really get comments until like I started dressing differently and really like presenting myself in a way that was I was actually sure of who I was, not just like doing drag.
Yeah. I also find it interesting like that you were talking about sitting with yourself, like by yourself and being like, who am I when no one else is in the room? Because like I just had therapy before this. And my therapist asked,
drop the wisdom, Ellie.
No, because my therapist literally asked me that question. She was like, what do you like about yourself when you're alone? And I was like, what?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I was like, what why are you saying this to
Definitely.
me? Like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm always with other
Why are
people.
you hurting
so
me?
like,
Stop hurting me.
Yeah.
so does it matter?
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
like, I was
Yeah,
like,
and
oh
I
shit.
like really the first times in my life that I was able to like start to express this like side of myself where my transness was living was like through the veil of performance. So it was like musical theater where I was performing and then getting applause, and that like exchange, that immediate feedback was what like guided me. And so I think a lot of queer people can understand this experience of being like incredibly hyper aware of just our surroundings and of the people around us and like what their moods are. And this is also, I think, has to do with like family dynamics as well. But like when you just know if someone's mood has shifted or if some like just out of protection. So I realized that like that was my higher power. I was just letting other people's experience guide how I would move through the world, and the biggest people pleaser. And I realized that like I just didn't know who I was. And I had a really toxic ex once who said that to me, like, you just don't know who you are. Like, I don't know who you are. Every room you enter, you're a different person. And he was the worst and also very right. And I wasn't ready to hear that, which is so mean to say to someone, but it was so true.
Mhm.
I would be whatever the room needed of me. And I'm still working against that.
Yeah. That's such a hard thing to say. Listen, we just covered this before we started recording. We're all
Mhm,
theater kids growing up, right? It's like, it's such a hard thing to say to the people who are in some way
Mhm.
natural performers, which I don't mean in the sense of like natural talents. I mean like
Yeah.
performing
Right.
at all times, right? And it's like, because Ellie and I talk about
Sorry,
that.
I feel so red fulfilled right now, but keep going.
Ellie's just gonna pull out a notebook and like sit in the
I'm
back
like-
crying and taking notes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm like self-actualization.
No, but I mean, like, they're
Yeah.
completely seriously though, because like Ellie and I talk about this a lot, right? Like one of the things that we love doing this podcast, and we love getting to sit and talk to each
Mhm.
other and other people, but we also know about ourselves that like we are fully able to every single week, regardless of what else is going on in our lives, sit down in what is like a real but
Mhm.
also
Right.
performative space, right? Where like we're not pretending to enjoy talking to people. We're not pretending to have the things that we say and the stories that we tell and the things that we share. We're like, they're not made up, but you're
Right,
being what the
exactly.
room needs, right? And that's like, that is such a specific
Yeah, for sure.
personality type of many people. And yeah, that absolutely is a way to read for filth someone for whom that is the case, is to be like, but who are you? And you're like, well, who do
Exactly.
you need?
Yeah.
Who do you need right now?
Yeah,
Actually, I'll
right.
be them.
And there's no
right?
shame
Like,
in being aware of our surroundings. Like that's a beautiful skill. Like it's like all of those skills that we gain from our trauma are skills that we can now use to our benefit, but it only becomes a problem when we abandon ourselves to like fulfill other people's needs or wants from us. And it's like my fiance's like helped me with this so much, that like people pleasing is not nice because you're lying to them. You're not being true.
Ellie's just gonna walk out of the room right now.
I have to leave.
Yeah.
No, this is honestly so good. No, this is so good for me. Like this is incredible.
It's so funny because like I always take it here. It's like whenever I'm hanging out with like friends, it's always like 1 minute it's do, and the next minute it's like talk about your trauma. Like
Yeah.
like
God damn it, Elle, I'll tell you everything.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh my God. But no, I mean that is so real. And I'm like I really am like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in fucking therapy again. But honestly,
Yeah, we
it's
are.
fine. We're here. I find it so, the people pleasing thing, like Leigh knows why this is hitting me so hard. We do not need to tell the public.
Mm-mm.
But hello everyone. If you know, you know. Someone's gonna be listening to this podcast episode who knows, and they're gonna be like, Ellie, crazy bitch. But what was I gonna say? I think that is something that I also
Mhm.
personally struggle with. When you said people pleasing is not nice, because you're like, no, but I want them to be happy. And it's like, no, but yeah,
Yeah.
you are lying to them.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
it's also
like,
not
that hit me
sorry.
real hard.
But it's also not nice to yourself. It's so mean to yourself. Like it's literally saying like whatever I'm experiencing right now is less important than what they're experiencing, even though it's conflicting with my experience. So it's like always choosing
Mhm.
yourself last. And when people say like be true to yourself, I think a lot of times like people don't know what that means. Like for a lot of like non-queer like people, it's like I like realized who I was and I'm just a silly girl. I'm silly. And I'm like, okay, like I love that. I love that journey, but like what does like what does
What does
that
a silly
mean to
girl
you?
mean to
Like
you,
what does that
really?
mean?
Yeah.
But I think like to be true to yourself, it means to like listen to your experience and honor it in some way. And like I still struggle with that because I still like there is a piece of me that still like pieces my worth together by like how I make people feel. And the more I know and love myself, the less tolerable people become. Like the more I'm just like, God, like like you're so hard to be around. And I'm like, but I need to be nice. Even though I don't like you. It's like yeah.
That was too funny. Oh, also, okay, because I know we sort of talked about this before we logged, like
Mhm.
we logged on, because you were talking also about how like these are things about people that like
Mhm.
everyone experiences, people pleasing or like just like figuring out who
Mhm.
you are as a person. But for you, you feel like your like transness was super integral in those healing
Absolutely.
journeys. Would you talk a little bit about like how those things like come
Yeah.
together?
It's like always felt a certain discomfort growing up with myself, with my identity and my body, but like most loudly just my in my experience, but I didn't have like any way to really pin it down because I wasn't given any language or tools to understand what that discomfort was. But now I realize it was like a dissonance between how I was presenting myself and how I wanted to present myself, how I felt called to present myself. And everyone has that experience. It's like you grow up and you're just a free spirit. You're just doing whatever you want. And then you're told no. And you're constantly shown cues all around society about where you belong, where you're supposed to go. Like you go to the store and there's a sign about which aisle you're supposed to go into. And you stop questioning like why, and you just follow the rules because a lot of times we fear that like we'll lose out on love or we won't be accepted if we're not just following these things. And for me, my transness was the thing that like really like smacked me awake. The minute I was looking up on YouTube like trans, non-binary, and all of a sudden
Google quiz.
quite literally.
Am I
And
trans?
The first question is like, have you looked up this
right,
quiz?
exactly.
Cosmo
Like
quiz,
if you're
yeah.
questioning it, sweetie, like it's happening. But but I remember it all just like
What is
right,
an
what
egg?
yeah. Just very wait, I was about to say dairy heavy, but eggs aren't dairy, I've learned. But like once I realized like oh like I might be non-binary and trans, like it's like all of these string of experiences clicked into place, and I realized that all throughout my life that discomfort was the voice inside me that was saying like there's more here, like look at me, look at me, look at me, and me pushing it down, and the
Mm.
pushing it down was creating the discomfort. And once, because the transness was something that I couldn't ignore, like I literally couldn't move forward, like I wouldn't like live without moving forward listening to this thing. All of a sudden I'm able to reevaluate my entire life. Everything I'm questioning because I'm like, gosh, this thing that I told myself for years was true about myself and I was told is not. So what else is not true? And so now where
Yeah.
my transness, the truth about my transness lives is where I always go to when I'm trying to figure out how I actually feel about something. And so I know it's like I know that feeling of like where that voice lived, that feeling is what's guiding me. And so transness is like was the door to that room where like my intuition is. And that's like truly living in there as much as we can is how we like actualize our true selves.
You know what I love about that is because I think what's funny is I think the idea of being the sort of people pleasing, being the sort of chameleon people who are able to adapt to be who you think people want you to be, people need you to be, all that stuff. I think it is a very common queer trait because of exactly what you're saying, right? That I think whether it's your sexuality, your gender identity, like all of these different things, I think a lot of queer people, you spend so much time being like, no, right? Like shove that down. And so if I'm not that, like who I'm being, like by design, right? I'm being who someone else wants me to be instead of being who I am going to realize I am or have realized I am, but am wildly avoided, right? And so what I love about that is that I've never heard someone put it in those terms of saying like you saying turning to your transness as being like, that's my go-to, like that's the bedrock, right? Once I have that, everything else can like build from there or is good from there. But I think it's one of those things that feels so correct for how I think Ellie and I feel about like being gay, right? Because we talk all the time about how we're like being gay is like the best thing, right?
True.
Like it's the best thing, and I get all the things when people are like being gay is not the most interesting thing about me, and we're always like, but isn't it though? And it's like it's not in and of itself. Exactly. It's not, right? Like it's the fact of being gay is like, yeah, no, sure. I mean, that's not like wild or fascinating or like whatever, but I think that there's always been something about that, like, no, but that's where all of finding the rest of me started from, right? Like a lot of the Ellie's just gonna lie down on the floor for like the next hour.
An existential fucking crisis, but it's so true. Like it's so
true though, right?
It's so
and
true.
I don't feel like we've ever put that in those words, and I love that.
That's so,
I love that.
Like it's just wrecking me right now in a good way.
It's not the most interesting thing about either of us, but at the same time,
it does create everything. Like it creates everything else about you. Because I think, for me at least, thinking about the like suppression, right, is like also you're just like, okay, I have not suppressed my gayness, but like because I'm so used to the feeling of the suppression, what are the other things that I suppress in my body and ignore my own intuition about? So like just hearing you talk about coming back to that feeling of like, actually, I might cut this, but let me just tell my life.
Okay.
I'm with you.
The whole thing.
Only a little bit. No, only a little bit. I recently broke up with my girlfriend, and it's okay. But it was because I was suppressing this feeling inside of me that this is not right. And I even said to her this while we were breaking up, and this is why it's really resonating with me, is like, she's like, well, if you thought it wasn't right, like for however long, like you've basically been lying to me, right? But it feels like when I came out, where I was pushing it down so hard, like I wanted to be this person who was in a relationship with you. I was lying, but I was lying to myself, so then I lied to you.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I didn't know I was lying to you. But I did lie.
I have since realized.
I have since realized I have been lying, or like that it's like that suppression is so strong. Yeah. And it reminded me so much of coming out. And then I think it's also like another thing that clicks in your head that's like, okay, I did the hard thing, but there's other hard things that you have to keep doing. This was not the hardest thing coming out as gay. It's like unlearning all of the things that all the defense mechanisms, all the coping mechanisms that you use to suppress your gayness, 100%. Those don't just go away. They just manifest in other ways.
We've spent years of our lives like carving out grooves in our brain that makes that decision for us. And so it's like recarving a new path. It's like, ouch. Ouchie. Ow. But it's like, it's so beautiful that like I think that not just queer people have these defining moments, like, but it's like queer people, like it's about, for a lot of us, like survival. So it's like, we don't have a choice but to walk through the door that's being presented to us, where I think,
It's also, I don't
Yeah.
think only queer people have that. I think most to all queer
Yes,
people
exactly.
do is the thing. Like, there's plenty of other things where people will self-reflect and, you know, like, learn and unbury things about themselves in various other ways. Sure. It's more of like a, you know, like all rectangles are squares
Yeah.
kind of thing. Then I think it's like, it solely
Right.
belongs to queer people. But I just think it's such a big part of so many queer people's stories, right? Is that it's why we always say, like, you go through your second puberty, you go through your, you know, because you're just, so much of that experience is that time in your life when you're like, who am I actually, right? Like, I'm figuring it out as I go. And whether you're doing that at, you know, 14 with everyone else, or whether you're doing that at 40 because that's when you sort of finally cracked that door open and took a look at what was actually, you know, hiding down in there. Yeah, there's something about that first step. Like, that first step has to happen eventually, right? To be able to get there. Otherwise, you're just going to keep going down this path of like, well, I guess I'm this person for everyone else. Better, you know, get that hammered in there nice and comfy and never
Like, I literally
question.
remember saying in high school, like, I can't wait for the day that I realize, like, this is who I am and this is who I'm always gonna be. And then a mentor at the time was like, honey, like, that never comes. And that's something that
Yeah.
that I try to remind myself too in my transition, is that, like, yes, I am in transition, and also, like, the minute I came out is when I reached the destination. And, like, that destination is just honoring myself in each moment. And, like, there's always going to be more to uncover. And then once we, like, uncover that, there's more and there's more. And then, like, something else that we thought we got over comes back again. And, like, it's just a forever like process, and I love it. That's why, like, I'm obsessed with talking about these things, because I know that, like, this self-awareness is what has, like, made my life so beautiful. Like, I love my life. I wake up, not always, but recently especially, I've just been like, do, like, literally just, like, laughing at myself and just being silly. And because, like, I've worked so hard to, like, to listen to myself, and it's, like, guided me towards, like, a beautiful relationship and a beautiful home, and, like, just my life feels so good, you know. And that's always been the thing. I just want, I don't like, I care less about how my life looks and more about how it feels. And yeah,
I love that. Well, let's take a real quick break and come back, make Elle's day, talk about all this even more.
What's up, everyone? It's Noah Daniels.
Hey, y'all, I'm JJ.
Hey, guys, it's Kat.
And we're your hosts of the Real Hauntings podcast, where we bring on guests who share their first-hand encounter ghost stories and supernatural experiences. Now on to the trailer.
I've been warned to not tell this story, but I think because of the way it ends, it's okay to tell this story, because some people say that with certain entities, to, like, speak of them or talk about them or in any way, like, portray them as powerful will attract them to other people. The creepiest thing about it to me is a lot of times it would wait for me to notice it. Like, it would just lay its arm out like this, and then I'd be like, where is it? Where is it? And then I'd see it, and then it would just slither back.
For more information on the Real Hauntings, Real Ghost Stories podcast, make sure you check out real.fm to learn more about our podcast and many other amazing podcasts.
There's a lot going on right now. Mounting economic inequality, threats to democracy, environmental disaster, the sour stench of chaos in the air. I'm Brooke Gladstone, host of WNYC's On the Media. Want to understand the reasons and the meanings of the narratives that led us here, and maybe how to head them off at the pass? That's On the Media's specialty. Take a listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, do you like true crime? Me too. And I know what you're thinking. There's so many true crime pods out there, you've already heard all the stories. Well, what if I were to tell you you're wrong? I'm Leroy Luna, the host of Excuse Me, That's Illegal. the podcast that takes a hardcore look at softcore crime. I've got a back catalog of hundreds of bizarre and hilarious stories just waiting to be heard by you. So come join me. Excuse Me, That's Illegal is available anywhere you get your favorite podcasts, with new episodes dropping on the 10th, 20th, and 30th every month, baby!
At Radiolab, we love nothing more than nerding out about science, neuroscience, chemistry.
But we do also like to get into other kinds of stories. Stories about policing or
politics,
country music,
hockey,
sex, of bugs.
Regardless of whether we're looking at science or not science, we bring a rigorous curiosity to get you the answers.
And hopefully make you see the world anew.
Radiolab, adventures on the edge of what we think we know.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
So what I want to jump back in and talk about, because we touched on it a little bit, but I want to dive in some more, because I think obviously it's like a big part of the topic for this is I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about specifically that journey for you and how coming out as trans was unique in that way, because I do think, like, you know, we're talking about what I think are some of the generalities for queer people. I think there is a lot of queerness that still, especially when you're coming out, and I think especially when people are young and coming out, I think a lot of the first part of queerness still has to do with realizing things about yourself in relation to other people, right? Like, I think a lot of queer people eventually get to a point where it's like more just about examining yourself. But I feel like a lot of it sort of still starts in that respect of like, who am I attracted to, right? Like, who do I want to be attracted to me? Like, there's some of that sense of it. And I feel like there's something about what you were saying before about coming out as trans that's like really sitting with that question of like, who am I? Right? I'll forego the theater nerd reference in me that's fighting its way out. But who am I? Don't do it, Ellie. I'm holding it down. I'm holding it down for all of us.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, there's so many options. So, anyways, let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that that's something that is sort of unique as well.
Do you mean like talking
journey.
specifically about like sexuality within my transness, or like transness in relationship?
No, I mean specifically not just the act of saying like I'm not self-reflecting in the sense of like, who am I as part of like this two-party problem of attraction and sex and whatever, but just me part of it.
A little
Do you know
bit.
What I mean?
I think attraction like was so like I dissociated from that experience in order to explore myself. So like I very much was like, because I knew that like, or I had a feeling that I would be undesirable as a trans person. So I think yeah. So maybe I can talk about that, how that kind of led to the self-actualization, only to then realize that I am hot and sexy. And okay, cool.
I think maybe we could talk a little bit about, because like I've watched all your content and like you and Ezra are so fucking cute, I want to die. But like I feel like it also is like a beautiful part of like loving yourself, but also like loving yourself in relation with another person, and also a person who like very intrinsically understands your trans experience.
Absolutely.
Like, how has that impacted you in this like self-actualization journey?
Huge. Yeah, like I think like having a witness to that experience like is a whole different thing. You can't hide from anything because someone's watching. And it's like, but that's great because then you can like look at it and then share it with someone. And then that externalizes it and actualizes this thing and makes it real. And then you can go deeper. Yeah. It's the best.
There's also something that's really just always beautiful about, as you are becoming the person that you are and want to be, like having someone who sees that and sees you, right? Like, because that's such a big part of, I think, becoming who you want to be, is like, you're doing it for you, absolutely, sure, but there's still a part that like the part that feels healing about it is
Yeah.
when someone else sees you and is like, oh, hey.
Right,
And you're like,
exactly.
yes,
Yeah,
me.
and
That is me. Yes, you
yeah.
saw me.
And that's the thing. It's like
Hooray.
being seen is my thing. That's always that's my trigger. It's
Yeah.
abandonment and feeling seen. And when I don't feel seen, I feel abandoned. It's like, yeah.
I'm really
Yes,
loving
literally.
this therapy session. It's like really getting me through life.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But it's so true though, right? Like there is, I think it's why we always say too, it's like there's just something that's always so great about being just in queer community in a general sense, right? Because I think we just tend to see
Right.
better. Like I was telling, like even stupid stuff where it was like, you know, I have a coworker, like someone I work with pretty closely at work, who's also a lesbian, and it's like I showed up at work the other day and I was just wearing like a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, but I had like a little chain around the neck or something. And I showed up at work, I walk over to her desk and she just looks at me and she's like, oh, Leigh, you look great today. Like you're giving big dyke energy. And I was
Yeah.
like, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel
Thank
like I said
you.
something to you about that chain as well. That chain was really...
Yes, yeah, you did. But it's like,
chain
but it
was
was
chaining.
just, but there was just something very like small and simple about being like, listen, like I know that this is an outfit that is not for the straight people in my office. Like it's not like any of them are
Yeah.
gonna be like, what are you wearing? But like no one's going to validate in that same way as
Right.
like another queer person's gonna
Yeah.
look at you and be
Yeah.
like,
I mean, that,
"Mhm,
yeah.
yep. I see what you've got going on here."
Yeah.
And you're like, thank you. Appreciate you.
Like when I first met Ezra at that time in my life, I was so used to people seeing me by like via self-correction.
What do you mean by that?
So they'd see either the version of myself that they knew, or they'd see the version of myself that like through the filter of like society. So they'd see just a man playing dress up and they'd self-correct in their head. And people do that all the time. They see man and then they're like, oh no, that's a trans woman, she. So it's like he then she always in their head. And trans people feel the correction, even if you're respecting them, which I know might make some people feel like defeated, but that's why I created like a course to help people go deeper. So there isn't that self-correction. But in order to see people differently, I believe that you have to see yourself apart from these filters and structures. So being with another trans person and being in community, there's that knowing that like they couldn't misgender me because they see me. There's no risk. And that's honestly, I don't want to settle for less at this point in my life. I'm now just sort of like figuring out what it looks like to like branch out when it comes to like career stuff, because I realize that like there are beautiful people that like I can and will collaborate with who haven't done that yet. So like who will self-correct, and how do I exist with them once I've known a level of understanding that I don't want to give up. So like, but that's the beauty of T for T relationships is that like you can go so much deeper because there's that baseline of understanding and there's no catching up.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah.
But then it's also like, how do we teach people to do? Because I think it is one of the things that I do feel very strongly about as someone who doesn't identify as trans, that I think I learned the most from trans people is the value and the importance of everybody, trans or not, to sit in reflection with your own gender, right? And to like really sit down and think about like, what are the things that you feel about your gender? Why do you feel those things about your gender? Which ones are you actually attached to? Which ones have just been foisted on you by the world around you? Like, what are you willing to let go of? What do you want to hold on to, and why? Like all of these things. And it's like there's so much more of my own sense of comfort in myself and what I do think about my gender and what I do think about my presentation and how I do want to be perceived. Like there's so much value that comes from that, right?
Yeah.
And there's so much value in realizing like the stupidest things that you're still holding on to that you don't need to. and the things that you haven't been allowing yourself to have that actually bring you like a huge amount of joy.
Yeah.
You know, and like that,
Like your chain, is that what you're
sense-
saying? Or
like,
Yeah.
no, you know what it is? You know what I realized? This literally, I had this thought like maybe a month ago, and it was the stupidest thing that I was like, wow, you know what's funny is like, as a cis person, I feel like there are not a lot of times in your life that you really like that society encourages us to focus on things that make us feel gender dysphoria or gender euphoria, especially, right? Because like your understanding of gender euphoria as a cis person is largely supposed to be influenced by like the male gaze, right? In whatever form, whether you're like male or female presenting or whatever, like so much of it sort of comes down to that. And so I remember saying like that when I was pregnant, that was like the most I have ever felt dysphoric in my life. Like as someone who has sort of always been sort of like masculine leaning, you know, like more non-binary androgynous-y mask presenting, I was like being pregnant was a nightmare for me in terms of like my sense of my own identity. I hated it. But you know what I realized last month or like a couple of weeks ago, that I was like, wow, you know what's funny is like a small thing that I never really thought that much about, but that actually brings me like a ton of euphoria, is like I don't shave my legs anymore. And I don't know why, but every time I'm just like, I'm happy.
Well,
like,
I know
it
why
makes
you're
me
happy, because shaving your legs, by shaving my legs takes
No,
like
I
45
mean, yes.
fucking minutes.
Like from a, I think for a long time, that's what I thought too, is I was like, from a practical perspective, I love not shaving my legs anymore. But there was also a point where I was like, I was just wearing like shorts and a t-shirt and whatever. And I like was looking down and I was like, I love this. Like, I like how my body looks right now. And like, in a sense that I'm like, I don't think I'd ever really bothered to pay that much attention to it. And I was just like, oh, is this that euphoria trans people are always going on about? You're right. I do feel good and happy inside. And it's just because of me being myself. What a concept. Like, how crazy. And I was like, that's such a like silly thing to have like suddenly realized at like 37 years of age, you know? So I was like, wow, actually, like when you get right down to it, I'm like, I like shaving my armpits because I sweat a lot and I feel more comfortable and happier. Like, sure, fine. But I'm like, but I don't like shaving my legs and I like how my legs look like this. And I was like, this is crazy. But like, there are small, silly, stupid things that are going to be true for every person. And I think that like finding the things about yourself.
Also, I would like to encourage you to not say stupid.
Because that's true. I'm saying because I feel stupid about it. Do you know what I mean?
Like, if it makes you happy, it's not dumb.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
It might seem silly, but like it's one of those tiny doors, you know, into like, oh, that feeling that I'm having right now, like that is a feeling that I can look for and follow in all aspects of my life. And it's the fascinating thing, is that like people typically only label it as dysphoria or affirmation when it goes against society's expectations or like desires for you. So that's why I so encourage people to like educate themselves like intellectually in their noggin about the gender binary, the realities and complexities of biological sex beyond what we learned in middle school, and then let it actually sink into our being. And then let it like see through the eyes of like the truth of science and these societal expectations. And how have I been like morphing myself to fit because it's easier? And that's the thing, is that it's so normalized to abandon ourselves. It's like, even like,
it's so normalized to abandon yourself. And I think the point I was trying to get to and then got derailed talking about how stupid I feel about it. The thing that it made me realize is that I was like, you know, like, listen, I remember being 16, 17, you're like, you know, just coming out of the closet and you have this idea, and you're young and you're stupid and you talk about things in this way where you're like, oh, but you know, like, you don't want to be those like, you know, hairy dykes who don't shave their armpits and their whatever, like all this stuff. And I think for a long time that there was something about the act of doing something like that, of saying like, I'm not going to shave my legs, I'm not going to shave my armpits, that felt like it was being done from mostly just a transgressive place, right? Like I'm fighting against this patriarchal cis het male gazy idea, right? And what I've noticed, like literally just in the last few weeks since realizing that I was like, oh wow, actually I like this about me. I like how my body looks. I like how it makes me feel, all this stuff, is that I've noticed now when I see other people, it totally changes your perception. Because I'm like, now instead of seeing it and being like, oh, like you're doing this to like fuck the patriarchy, right? I'm like, no, I look at people and I'm like, oh, you probably love that about your body, don't you? And I'm like, and it brings me joy for them in a way that it didn't used to in that same way. You know, I was like totally here for it. I'm like, I'm pro, do whatever you want, make your choices, like live your life how you want your body to be. But I don't think that I had the joy of it as clear in my mind of like seeing it for other people.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that like that's what hit me about what you were just saying is like that wanting to be seen and not wanting to settle for people who aren't seeing the same things is like I think that the more that you learn to find joy in yourself, it enables you to find that joy in seeing other people be themselves and seeing them be like the truest, most authentic person that they have realized that they want to be as well, and being like, you know what? And you probably feel great as a result. And like that makes me happy for you. And like that's such a real thing.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think like it's like a clear example of how like our perception informs our experience, and how you putting language to that experience by saying, is this euphoria? Now you're able to see you experience euphoria when you're seeing it in other people. And I do think a lot of how you've rewired your brain around that and with the help of language has helped you experience it in a different way. And that is like a clear correlation to like the other side of it is like folks who experience discomfort when they see trans people. Yeah. And they're just sort of like seeing their experience as this like divine truth when actually it's entirely informed by their perception. And also, like you said, like because now you've realized like, oh, this feels good for me. Like now I love seeing this person expressing themselves freely. It is so clear that like when they see someone who is like actively expressing themselves outside of the rules that they have been following without second guessing, then they experience a discomfort because it's like, no, you can't do that. Yeah. I paid off my student loans. You should too.
Exactly.
Like,
it's so like every single troll is just like, okay, so you're not happy.
Yeah.
Like, so you're unhappy.
So you're not happy.
So but deal with that, and then we can.
Even for queer people, I think, you know, because it's like, I do think it's easy to look at a lot of things and see the ways in which you're like, yeah, you're pushing back, you know, and it's like, great. And sure, that can be a part of it. And there is a sense of joy in finding that as well. But I'm like, but listen, like I have spent years and years and years like unpacking how I want to present and how I, you know, like how do I feel about my gender and my whatever. And I'm like, this is years later that like you can still have those small tiny like additional things to unpack to be like, oh, I was missing something still actually, you know,
and
I'm
we
like,
always will,
right?
Forever
and then
and ever,
but then
amen.
you're looking at like all these like, you know, cishet people who have done none
of that. Well, and that's the thing too when you look
none
at them,
of that.
Like I always say this too, like I'm like I look at them sometimes and I'm like I don't want to be you, and also I'm like a part of me is like it's like such a simple existence because I'm like you never question the rules.
Yeah.
You just live in them and you're like, okay, this is my life. But I'm also like,
Right.
it's also I personally would be miserable.
Right.
Because like the whole point
Exactly.
of being gay is to question the world around you
Yeah.
and like keep examining yourself. And sometimes it is exhausting.
And the point of like of the rules is so people don't have to question anything. It's like, so I can just, oh, like this is what I have to do. Cool. I'll just do that instead. And like, I'm not going to listen to this thing. And then they're going to be anxious and then like just blame it on all of the like things in front of them that are going on, you know, like, and or all of the manifestations of that abandonment, like that's making me anxious. But really it's that original, like, I'm not living authentically. Like, and that, I mean, we could go into like the capitalism of it all.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like that's
Let's go.
It's all that.
Go.
But it's also
thrive.
like that. What's that meme from where it's like, oh, like have you not heard of like doing whatever the fuck you want? Like, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so much truth to that sometimes now, where like, you know, looking at so many of like those kind of very just stuck people.
Yeah.
Straight or otherwise sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Of just looking at people who are like, you're still like, you are so burdened by
Mhm.
stuff that you refuse to let go of, and you just like, it's so hard, isn't it, to see people not be like, to just see people who aren't like, what, that must suck. Yeah, you're right. I'd be angry too, actually.
And there are a lot of like queer and trans people who like they come out, and because of like their fear of all it means to not follow these rules and the consequences of that, the literal physical threats that like creates, then they latch on to like, how close can I get to the rules to stay
That's where
safe?
you get the Caitlyn Jenners.
Yeah,
of the world.
precisely.
Well, it's
And
yeah,
you know-
it's
yeah.
it's like it is definitely like a safety thing, right?
Mhm.
Too, but it is
Yes.
like
Mhm.
the safer you are, the like less happy and self-actualized you can be, really. But it's like
Yeah,
a
a
very
lot of
tough
times.
line to toe when you are a queer person who clearly like it's a reasonable fear to
Right.
fear for your safety.
Yeah. Like I have so much empathy for folks who are like really concerned with passing, you know, because like I mean, because a lot of times that's like just where folks' dysphoria guides them, and a lot of times I think their dysphoria is informed by like that image of like woman or man that like that I think informs insecurities for everyone. These like images, but like I will never judge anything that anyone needs to do to
Yeah.
feel safe
Mhm.
and comfortable. It's like I think it's so easy to be like, that's wrong, that's right, but like there's so many factors influencing our experience that like it's okay if we're just following what's going to make us comfortable in this moment, you know?
Mhm.
Like and that's something that I've had to think about with my dysphoria too. It's like a lot of times like insecurity and dysphoria like feel the same, and it's hard to think like, okay, am I dysphoric, or am I starting to like pass more, so now I'm noticing the ways that I don't? Is it that dissonance? Like when I first came out as non-binary, like I felt euphoric in being gender non-conforming, and now that I physically transitioned for a couple years, there's, you know, what is coming up there.
Yeah.
Is my experience transforming? And then I get to this point where I am pathologizing my experience and just going in circles, and like, I'm not going to do anything. I don't need to solve every problem in the fucking world before I feel comfortable with myself.
Yeah.
And so that's the other side of it. It's good. I love that I think so much about these things because I want to make sure that what I'm doing is right and stuff. But like that whole idea that there's one thing is more right than another, like ultimately it's like making it right.
This
you know?
is where my therapist would read me for filth. What?
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Yeah.
You're like,
Don't
like,
think
but
about
there
your feelings.
are-
Feel your feelings. What? No.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah. right.
Well, I don't need help with that.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
I'm done.
so many feelings.
Yeah.
I watched My Old Ass yesterday, and I cried so hard at the movie theater. It was embarrassing.
Oh yes, I haven't seen it.
I cried so much,
Oh,
but
is
it was
so good?
wonderful. It's wonderful.
I love it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I also want to add too, because I think we've been like like really shitting on non-queer people, but not actually.
No.
But
We never do that on here.
But-
What? Sorry.
Look, like, but there, I mean, a lot of people who follow me on social media are people who see
Yeah.
like their experience in mine and are doing that work and are able to see my beauty because they are seeing themselves, you
Yeah.
know? And I think that's something that I'm working on trusting, is that there are people out there who aren't queer and trans who do see me.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
and because I know, I mean, again, it's like I think it is common among queer people. I don't think queer people are the only ones who have self-reflected. And honestly,
Right.
it's like I even just I remember when I was turning 30, like so many years ago.
Years ago.
Like I remember having so many other women especially say like, oh my god, your 30s are great, whether they were cis or straight or queer or trans or whatever, like just because I think there is something especially that I think is common among women is that we also have a lot heaped on us by society, right? And I think that there is something to be said for like as you grow out of a lot of the ages that are the most heavily hit by some of those, that you do learn to also let go of some of them. And I think a lot of just aging in a general sense is learning to stop caring so much. And I think a lot of that does happen in your 30s. Like that's what I tell people all the time now who are like, oh my god, I'm gonna be in my 30s. And I'm like, your 30s is the best time to like stop giving so many fucks. Like you're out of so many of them, and like it's freeing in a lot of ways, like regardless of your identity. And I do think that's true, you know, like for everyone across the board. And I think I've heard 40s is even more of the same, you know, and so I'm like, good, great, because honestly it's been a great road so far in my 30s to suddenly be like, oh yeah, actually I could just figure out who the fuck I am and be that person.
Yeah, and not give a shit about who other people want me to be or need me to be.
Yeah.
I think
and it's
like
so freeing. It feels so great.
Yeah.
We'll see, Leigh. I'm like
we'll see.
Early 30s. Existential crisis going through.
And don't you already feel like you're doing better at it?
I
Ellie?
actually do.
Yes,
honestly,
I'm telling you,
it's like
you run out of fucks.
Yeah,
and my therapist would say like that, like this is where the work happens. You know, it's in these like I'll be like crying about something. It's like I don't know what to do, and she'll be like, "You're doing it. Like you're right now. Look, like it's moving.
Yeah,
it's moving through you." Yeah, I feel, and something that I feel so grateful for is I'm turning 30 next year, and like I'm thrilled. I'm just like I feel so proud of just where I am. I feel so grateful and proud of like what I've accomplished in my life. And like before I came out, like I didn't have any images of the future. Like it just was blank. I would try to dig and just nothing. And now it's like I see a million different paths that I could take.
Do you feel like it's because you just like you were like, this version of myself doesn't exist in the future? You're like, I cannot even physically see myself in the future.
Literally, yes. I do think that's what it was, but I had no idea what was happening. And now it's fascinating that I look back and I don't have many memories from before. Like I was so dissociated that like, I don't know. People ask me things about my childhood. I'm like,
couldn't tell you.
I've nope, wasn't there, but I wasn't paying attention.
You're like, weird, never met him. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Literally.
That is
and
so
being
crazy.
them.
Yeah.
I'm realizing as I say that out loud, I'm like, that's gonna track badly on a podcast. But,
totally. Yeah. I love my life.
Great.
Also, and a lot of it has to do with like just like feeling a sense of family too with my fiance and 2 dogs, like, and like knowing what that feels like and actually realizing that like that lives in me. And that feeling like always has. And I feel so grateful that this feeling that I own, this person's been able to reflect back to me.
Yeah.
And now it's like it's just he like shines a light on like so much of myself. Because we're just like 2 people who know and love themselves, looking at each other, just shining on each other, and just like
so much sunshine, blinding
staring
each other.
into the sun. We're like, and that looks like absurdity. Like, just we are absurd people. But yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, just from watching some of your videos, it's so silly, but it's so fun. Like the 2 of you together just seems like so much fun.
Yeah. And that's something that really changed when I was first transitioning. Like it was very silly and fun and childlike, but I also was very serious about it. I was very like, I was always thinking about myself. Always. Oh my God. Jesus. And I realized like now, like there's so much more silliness and play in my life. because he's such a playful person, and that's something that I love, is that like you don't need to be, like I said, like pathologizing your experience to be having it.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it's like kind of the opposite. It's like you take time to think so then you can like live in it.
Yeah.
Well, and you can be playful when you're not awaiting an attack, you know?
Yeah,
like you
for
can
sure.
be playful when you're not constantly defensively holding up this like propped up thing, you know, that you're trying to put up for everyone else around you. Like it just
Yeah.
opens that space to find the joy in things. Like
Yeah.
that's you can't really otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love it.
Love it, love it.
I
Okay.
love it.
Is there anything else that we want to discuss before we head into our Q&A?
Ooh.
I feel
I
like
don't know.
we've really
We hit everything.
listeners, you really
Ellie's working overtime today.
You're really getting a deep
Yeah.
dive into my psyche. But here we
Yeah.
are. It's great.
I love it.
It's amazing.
I really
All
do.
right, let's head into our Q&A. We're ready.
Q and gay.
I'm gonna walk you through how this first one's gonna work, Ellie, because I wrote you a weird one.
There's no wait, so there's
no I know. So okay, I'll walk it through for Elle first too, and for all of our listeners maybe. So usually, so our Q&A is multiple choice or yes or no questions. We're gonna ask you, and then we put them up on our Twitter for our listeners to answer as well. And usually, what that means is we are restricted by the number of Twitter poll options, and so we always have a set number of answer choices. I wrote no answer choices for this. We're going to fill them in as we go for question 1, Ellie, so you can ask the question and then we will each provide an answer, and those will be the choices that our listeners will get to
Oh my
choose from, okay?
God.
Okay.
This is so stressful. Okay, here we go.
And then while Ellie sweats herself to death, we will work our way through it.
Yeah, I'm also
I
sweating.
know.
It's
Question number
stuffy
1.
in here.
What do you like about yourself when nobody is in the room?
Aww. I love that question. There's so many things. I'm like, do I go serious or silly? First thought, my boobies.
Good. I'm going to write it down.
Homegrown.
Nice. All right, so just what?
What's your
doing one.
serious answer though?
Okay.
That was seriously.
That was incredibly serious. No. Okay. What do I love about myself when no one's in the room? My integrity.
That was good.
Do you want to go next, Ellie, or do you need more
I can go next. It's okay. I like my imagination.
I love that.
Because when I'm alone in a room, I'm not alone.
Nope. there's an
a
entire
lot
crowd
going
here.
on up there.
I love that.
No one is alone.
I was gonna say like my principles, but I feel like integrity covers that pretty nicely. So I will pick something else, and I will say my empathy.
Interesting.
Uh-oh. What does that mean?
No, I agree with you. Never mind. Just like is an empathy sort of about other people? In a way.
Is, but I like that I think I am able to.
You like that your empathy exists inside of you even when you're alone.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that about you. But I was just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I also think there's like a difference between like having your experience of empathy, like seeing someone and having an experience based on that's informed by theirs, versus trying to guess what their experience is and then operating around that assumption, if that makes sense.
Yes. Well, and also the more
Usually,
I think
yeah.
about it too, you can have empathy for yourself, right?
Sure.
So you could
I
be empathetic to yourself by yourself.
I think
Right.
it's also, for me, it's a shorthand way of saying that, like, I care about other people a
Yeah.
lot. And I don't know
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of like a short way to say that. And I think the result is being like someone who is empathetic. But I think
Yeah.
that's sort of, regardless of whether there's someone else in the room or not.
You
I
still are
do-
empathetic. You're not going to
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
just because you're here, I'll be empathetic to you. But when you leave the room,
Right. Then
no
I'm a
more
sociopath.
empathy.
Yeah. And you can experience like the empathy and not abandon yourself and actually stay with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, like it's the superpower. It's what you do with it.
So
I love
there,
it.
you don't have to pick one of those, Elle, but those will be the choices our listeners get to choose from.
Boobies was
Okay, I
such a
love
good
it.
one, though. All right,
It
here
is
we
a
go.
good one.
Yeah, I love these
All right,
things.
Leigh, actually, you asked the second question.
Okay, question 2. What do you feel helped you best discover yourself? A, puberty, B, coming out, C, aging, or D, transitioning?
It's interesting because coming out and transitioning to me are like similar, because there's like the physical transition, but then there's like everything else, which, wait, can you ask the question again?
What do you feel helped you best discover yourself?
Probably coming out. I think that helped me look at myself
Hmm.
in a new way.
All right, question number 3. What part of your identity have you deeply sat and reflected on? A, gender, B, sexuality, C, presentation, or D, all of the above?
You know, I probably sat and reflected on my gender the most. Like, definitely all of the above, but no, I'll say all of the above. But like I said, like gender is like kind of the filter through which I explore everything else.
Yeah.
I love that. Question 4. Do you A, think about your feelings, B, feel your feelings, or C, avoid your feelings?
Wow. Well, I A and B.
That's allowed.
Yeah, definitely A and B. Yeah. I think I feel them, and then I start thinking about them, and then I feel them again, and then hopefully they move through me, and then I poop them out.
Amazing.
Never mind. We're not going to poop route. Not tonight.
You already went there. We're already imagining it.
Oh no.
I'm just seeing
my mystery is
I'm just seeing like
is gone.
recently watched Inside Out 2. I'm just like seeing all the cartoons like coming out of your poop. You know what I mean?
I love that. Oh, they're like writing it.
Yeah, they're like, wee.
Oh. That's so cute.
See? Imagination right there. Question number 5. What age has felt the most freeing to you? A, 20s, B, 30s, C, 40s, or D, 50s plus?
Ooh, well, I'm in my 20s now, so probably that.
And we'll see.
Yeah.
I know.
see
I'm
what the
curious.
next
Curious how the
decades
answers
bring.
roll in.
TBD. Hopefully more and more and more. That's the goal.
Remember, listeners, you can give us your own answers to this episode's Q&A questions on our Twitter at Lez Hang Out Pod. Elle, thank you so much for spending your night with us. This was so delightful.
Thank you. Seriously, this has been so nice. I always love these things because like a lot of times I'm thinking internally about my experience, and it's so nice to be in conversation because I don't know, sometimes I feel like we kind of like have access to this like vat of knowledge that exists when we're like in the flow of conversing that
Group
we might
therapy.
not always when we're just thinking. Yes,
That's
exactly.
what
That is what we call group therapy.
Well, let our listeners know
Yeah.
where they can find you, anything you have going on all the social medias.
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram at L.Deran, Deran. And I'll promote my ally workshop series. If you go to lderan.com, I have this 5-part video workshop series that helps allies like not just learn about trans and non-binary people, but really like open their hearts to how they interact with the concepts of gender.
So if you didn't get
Yeah.
enough therapy with Elle here, listeners, they've got you covered.
Yes.
There's a whole
I sure
series.
do. Yep, I did that.
Yes.
I worked very hard on it.
Incredible. We did it. We made a podcast.
Nailed it. That's so cool of us. Okay, I'm gonna stop
Ellie, how you
recording
doing?
I'm fine.
Let me hear you say hip, 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 well, yeah.
We love hearing from all of you, and we love continuing to build this community. So we just want to shout out some of our favorite things every episode. And this week, we want to shout out Sophie, who messaged us on Instagram about our Lesbian Master Talk episode. And what I loved about Sophie's message is that they were asking if it's like this universal experience to just be, what they said was emotionally obsessed with our attractive female teachers. And I just feel like, yes. I believe the answer
And Leigh and I are the sample size that you need for the entire
Yeah.
universe.
Can I tell you, like, have I told you this story about like my obsession with one of my teachers when I was little? Okay. I had this teacher, I want to say it was like second or third grade maybe, and I just thought she was like the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And I used to have like dreams where I was just like hanging out with her. But in my dreams, she was always wearing this like long green like evening gown dress.
Oh God,
which
Leigh.
I had obviously never seen her wear. Like picture like the atonement dress, you know? My subconscious was working real hard to stay in that closet.
Yes.
It was just like, yeah, you just naturally want to like hang out with your teacher, your beautiful teacher in a beautiful dress, like for no reason. No, normal stuff. Normal second grade girl stuff, right?
Yes. That is so
anyways,
crazy.
I think the answer is yes, Sophie.
Yes, you're correct. Wait, I'm so dying. You literally were like, and I'm in a tuxedo and I was paying for her meal.
Yeah, right?
And we... and we were actually at prom. I cannot.
Great.
That is
Anyways,
so funny.
So was Leigh a tiny dyke? Who's to say, you know?
Incredible.
Who's to say?
Oh my God. I love it. As always, I want to thank our Lesbian Jesus patrons, Mark Foster,
Lizette Stein,
Adi Benitez,
Sophia Phillips,
and Armani Gucci.
And our King Princess patrons, Amy and Ellen.
And Andrea Doucette, thank you so much for supporting the show. We cannot do it without you.
Remember, you can find us on all social medias. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at Lez Hang Out Pod.
You can email us at lezhangoutpod@gmail.com.
You can check out our website at lezhangoutpod.com.
Whatever app you use for podcasts, make sure you subscribe so you'll be the first to know when new episodes drop.
We also have videos up on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe at youtube.com/lezhangoutpod to catch them.
Lez Hang Out is an independently produced show hosted by us with audio production by me. Our production assistant is Kristen Murison, and other podcasting shenanigans by Leigh Holmes Foster.
If you want to help support the podcast, the first thing you can do, it's easy, it's free. Leave us a rating and a review on whatever app you use to listen to podcasts. It helps new people find the show.
If you want to support us on Patreon, you can do that at bit.ly/lezpatreon. It is the biggest thing that you can do to help us support this independently funded show. If you want to join, you get access to our Patreon bonus episodes and our Discord chat and all kinds of fun things. We'd love to see you there.
If you want to buy some Lez Hang Out merch, we have all of our new designs and items up on our website. You can find it at bit.ly/lezmerch. We have all sorts of new designs that we put up for spooky season. We are going to have some new designs dropping soon for the holidays as well. So make sure you keep an eye out for all that good merch coming your way.
And remember, we have a queer production company making queer podcast musicals with guaranteed happy endings. You can find everywhere at $dollarbeanprod.
You can also check out our website, dollarbeanproductions.com.
You can listen to all the episodes of our first show, The Flame, on any podcasting app.
Or you can listen to all the episodes of Journey to the Heart anywhere you listen to podcasts.
And if you want to help support us in making more musicals, you can join our Patreon at bit.ly/dollarbeanpatreon.
If you want to follow us individually, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at LSH Foster.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Ellie Brigida. With that, I'm Ellie.
And I'm Leigh.
And let's hang out again soon.
Let's hang out.
Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart Robbins, and I am the host and creator of the podcast Only One in the Room. Every week, my co-host Scott Slaughter and I invite you to join us and lose yourself in someone's incredible Only One story. We talk to real people dealing with issues like infertility, the death of a loved one, human trafficking, and women who, fake it. Oh, and we want to be fair, so we talk to celebrities too. Emmy winners like actor John Cryer, supermodels like Amber Valletta, and rock stars like Ryan Dusick. Everyone is invited to share their Only One story with our listeners. With 21 seasons and counting, we guarantee you that Only One in the Room has a story that you'll connect with. This podcast is for anyone who has ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone. Download Only One in the Room on Apple or Spotify today.